Trevor died 3 weeks ago, but his last email arrived in my inbox at 2:47 a.m. this morning. I was still awake when it came through. Most of us at Greenbank were. Sleep had become optional after the James Webb images leaked. The subject line read, "Open this alone, Hayden." Not kidding. The timestamp showed it had been scheduled to send automatically, which meant Trevor had set it up before he drove his Subaru into the New River Gorge with a bottle of bourbon and no intention of slowing down for the guardrail. I clicked it open. My office smelled like the sandwich I'd forgotten to eat 12 hours ago. The email contained a single video file and 2 sentences. "You were right about the signal degradation patterns. I should have listened when there was still time to warn the right people." I had no idea what he meant. Trevor and I had worked together for 6 years analysing radio telescope data, searching for technosignatures in the cosmic microwave background. We disagreed about a lot of things. Which baseball team deserved to exist, whether West Virginia counted as the South, if his boyfriend was actually planning to propose or just stringing him along. But signal degradation. I couldn't remember a single argument about that. The video was 19 minutes long. The thumbnail showed Trevor sitting in his apartment in Elkins, looking sober and terrified in a way I'd never seen him. I'd attended his funeral 4 days ago. His boyfriend had cried into my shoulder while Trevor's mother read Bible verses that Trevor would have hated. I moved the cursor over the play button. Something made me hesitate. Not fear exactly, more like the feeling you get standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that leaning forward even slightly would send you over. Trevor had been careful, methodical, the kind of person who labelled his file folders with colour-coded tabs and maintained a sourdough starter he'd named Barbara. He wouldn't schedule a posthumous email unless it mattered. Outside my window, the Greenbank telescope swung slowly across the sky, its massive dish tracking radio sources we'd been monitoring for weeks. Ever since the Webb images had shown. What had they shown exactly? The briefings kept changing. First, it was an unexpected stellar formation. Then, a gravitational anomaly. Then, the news outlets got hold of leaked photos and everything went to hell. The official story was that Webb had detected an artificial structure 27,000 light-years away, roughly the size of our solar system. A ring, inactive, ancient, possibly abandoned. Trevor's email suggested he'd known something else, something that made him drink bourbon before accelerating into a bridge support at 90 miles an hour. I clicked play. Trevor's recorded face filled my screen, and the first words out of his dead mouth were, "The ring isn't 27,000 light-years away. It never was. That was the lie they needed us to believe while they figured out what to do about the countdown." Trevor's face on the screen looked wrong in subtle ways. His apartment behind him was the same one I'd helped him move into, the bookshelf, the concert poster from Pittsburgh. His posture reminded me of the way animals sit perfectly still when they're trying not to be seen. "They're going to call it measurement error," Trevor said in the video. His voice sounded flat, rehearsed. "Parallax, instrumental drift. They'll say we miscalculated the distance because of gravitational lensing or some damn thing. By the time you watch this, they'll have already convinced everyone at the observatory that the structure is safely far away. 27,000 light-years. Might as well be on the other side of the universe, right?" He leaned closer to the camera. "It's 12 light-years away, Hayden. 12. And it's been there the whole time we've been looking up at the stars, watching us like we're bacteria in a petri dish." My office chair creaked as I sat back. 12 light-years would put it barely outside our solar system. "I know what you're thinking," Trevor continued. "How could something that massive be that close without us noticing? How could every telescope on Earth miss a structure the size of Jupiter's orbit sitting practically in our cosmic backyard?" He laughed, but it sounded like something breaking. "Because it doesn't want to be seen. Not until now. Not until it decided we were worth looking at directly." The video quality degraded for a moment, horizontal lines flickering across Trevor's face before resolving. 3 weeks ago, the ring changed position. You remember that Tuesday when all the deep space arrays went haywire? When we lost telemetry on 6 satellites and NASA blamed solar activity? Trevor's hands were shaking. That wasn't the sun. That was the ring rotating. The gravitational wake scrambled every sensitive instrument pointing in its direction. I paused the video and pulled up my calendar. 3 weeks ago was April 14th. I remembered that Tuesday. We'd lost connection with Hubble for 17 minutes, and the whole facility had gone into crisis mode trying to figure out what had happened. The official explanation had been a coronal mass ejection, but I remembered thinking at the time that the timing felt wrong. Solar events usually gave us warning signs. I hit play again. The Webb images everyone's seen? Those are from before the rotation. Ancient light showing us what the ring looked like 27,000 years ago. Trevor wiped his mouth. The real data showing its current position, that's all classified now. I only saw it because Dalton in the imaging lab owed me a favor. He hung himself 2 days after showing me the files. Dalton Kruger. I'd heard about his death. They'd found him in his garage in Marlinton with a garden hose running from his exhaust. Depression, everyone had said. The ring is pointed at us now, Trevor said, like a camera lens focusing, like something deciding whether we're worth the effort of closer examination. And here's the thing that made Dalton kill himself, the thing that's going to make me get in my car tonight and drive until I don't have to think about it anymore. He held up a printout covered in spectrographic data, wavelengths and frequency patterns I couldn't clearly make out through the video compression. It's scanning us, broadcasting some kind of penetrating radiation across every frequency we can measure and probably a dozen we can't. Not radio waves, something else, something that passes through matter like it's not even there. His voice cracked. We've been detecting increased cancer rates in a 10-mile radius around the observatory for the past 9 days. Livestock in Pocahontas County are aborting their pregnancies. Birds are flying into windows like they've forgotten how glass works. The scan is affecting biological systems, Hayden. It's reaching into our cells and reading us like a book we never agreed to open. I thought about the headaches I'd been having lately, the nosebleed I'd woken up with yesterday morning, the way my cat had started hiding under the bed and refusing to come out. By my calculations, Trevor said, pulling out a notebook covered in his precise handwriting, the scan will be complete in 37 days from when I'm recording this. Whatever information the ring is collecting about us, about Earth, about every living thing on this planet, it'll have everything it needs in just over a month. And then he stopped talking. Just sat there staring at the camera with eyes that had already decided not to see what came next. I don't know what happens then, he finally whispered. But Dalton found something in the historical astronomical records. Other stars in nearby systems. Other planets that should be teeming with radio signals and aren't. Dead worlds in a radius around that thing. Dead in ways that don't match natural causes. Dead in ways that suggest they were very deliberately switched off. Trevor reached for something off camera, and when his hand came back it was holding a pistol. Just holding it, not pointing it anywhere. The gesture was almost absent-minded. I'm sending this to you because you're stubborn enough to do something with it. Maybe warn people. Maybe try to figure out what the scan is actually looking for. He set the gun down on the desk. Or maybe you'll do what I'm going to do and find a way to stop thinking about it before the 37 days run out. Either way, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you about the signal degradation. You were right. You were right about all of it. The video ended abruptly. My office was very quiet. Outside, I heard footsteps in the hallway, someone walking past. Normal sounds from a normal night. But I couldn't stop thinking about Trevor's pistol on that desk and how he decided the gun wasn't quick enough. The headache behind my eyes pulsed steadily in rhythm with my heartbeat. 37 days from 3 weeks ago meant we had 16 days left. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent 6 hours cross-referencing Trevor's claims with publicly available astronomical data. Most of the relevant datasets had been reclassified in the past 2 weeks. Entire archives that used to be open access now required security clearances I didn't have. By sunrise, I'd found 3 inconsistencies in the official narrative about the ring's distance. Small things, timing discrepancies in the parallax measurements, wavelength shifts that didn't match the stated coordinates. Nothing conclusive, but enough to make Trevor's conspiracy seem less insane than it should have. I was staring at a particularly suspicious gap in the Hubble maintenance logs when someone knocked on my office door. "It's open!" I called out, not looking up from my screen. The door opened and Dr. Nathan Briggs walked in carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. Nathan was one of the senior astronomers at Green Bank, a specialist in radio frequency analysis. He was in his early 50s, with silver hair kept military short and a tendency to wear flannel even in summer. We'd worked together on a pulsar timing project 2 years ago and maintained a friendly professional relationship, the kind where we'd occasionally grab drinks in Elkins and complain about funding cuts. "You look like hell," Nathan said, setting one of the coffees on my desk. "When's the last time you went home? What day is it?" "Thursday." He sat down in the chair across from me. "Listen, I heard about Trevor. I know you two were close. If you need time..." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've got dark circles that could qualify as geological features." He took a sip of his coffee. "And judging by the 17 browser tabs I can see, you're doing something that's either going to get you in trouble or get you fired." I should have closed the research, should have made up an excuse and sent Nathan away. Instead, I heard myself asking, "Have you noticed anything strange about the Webb data? Anything that doesn't add up?" Nathan's expression shifted slightly. It wasn't surprise exactly, more like the look of someone who'd been waiting for a particular question and was relieved it had finally been asked. "Close the door," he said quietly. I got up and shut it, twisting the lock for good measure. When I turned back around, Nathan had pulled a flash drive from his pocket and was holding it like it might explode if he squeezed too hard. 3 days ago, I received an encrypted file from someone at the Arecibo Observatory, or what's left of Arecibo. Most of their staff got reassigned after the collapse. He set the flash drive on my desk between us. The sender used an anonymous remailer, but I recognized the writing style. It was Thomas Greer. You know him? I shook my head. Old colleague from my MIT days, brilliant radio astronomer, terrible poker player. Last I heard, he was working on some classified project tracking near-Earth objects. Nathan's jaw tightened. They found him in his bathtub last week, slit wrists. The list of suicides was getting longer. Trevor, Dalton, Thomas Greer. How many others had there been that hadn't made it into the news? "What's on the drive?" I asked. "Raw data from the Goldstone Deep Space Network. Timestamps from the night the ring rotated." Nathan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Every deep space tracking station detected a massive gravitational displacement event. Not just electromagnetic interference, actual space-time distortion. The kind of readings you'd get if something with Jupiter's mass suddenly moved faster than it should be able to." "How much faster?" "Fast enough that it shouldn't exist. Fast enough that every physicist who's seen these numbers has been reassigned or stopped returning calls." He nodded toward my computer. "You've been looking at the distance calculations. You've seen the inconsistencies." I thought about lying, but we were past that point. "Trevor sent me a video before he died. He said the ring is 12 light years away." Nathan didn't look surprised. "That matches what Thomas calculated. He ran the gravitational displacement data through 3 different models, and they all put the structure somewhere between 11 and 13 light years out. Basically sitting on our doorstep in cosmic terms." "So why the cover-up?" "Because if people knew there was something that massive, that close and capable of moving with that speed..." Nathan spread his hands. "Panic, economic collapse, take your pick. I thought about the nosebleed I'd woken up with yesterday, the way my cat had stopped eating completely, the livestock miscarriages in Pocahontas County. Trevor said it was scanning us, collecting data about Earth, about everything alive on the planet." Nathan's face went pale, actually pale, the color draining out of his skin in a way I'd never seen outside of hospital waiting rooms. "Tell me he was wrong," I said quietly. "I can't." Nathan pulled out his phone and scrolled through a series of images, screenshots of spectroscopic data, wave patterns I didn't recognize. "For the past 16 days, every radio telescope on Earth has been picking up a continuous broadcast on frequencies we've never detected before. It's not communication. It's more like sonar, like something is bouncing radiation off the planet and measuring what comes back." "What kind of information could you get from that?" "Everything. Atmospheric composition, ocean depths, distribution of biomass. If the scanning frequency is granular enough, you could theoretically map every living organism on the surface, every human being, every animal, every bacteria in every gut." He set his phone face down on the desk like he couldn't stand to look at it anymore. "We're being inventoried, Hayden, catalogued, and whatever's doing the cataloguing has been at it for more than 2 weeks." The fluorescent lights in my office buzzed. I'd never noticed how loud they were before, or how the frequency made my molars ache in a way that felt wrong. "There's something else," Nathan said. He was looking at me now with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "The scan isn't uniform. It's concentrating on specific areas, population centers, cities, places with high densities of human activity. Like it's looking for something specific, or counting something specific." Nathan stood up abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the telescope. The massive dish swung slowly against the morning sky, tracking radio sources we were no longer allowed to discuss in official reports. Thomas's last message said he'd found evidence of similar scans in historical data, events that got written off as solar storms or geomagnetic anomalies. He was convinced this had happened before. How long before? Centuries, maybe longer. Nathan turned back to face me, and I noticed his hands were shaking the same way Trevor's had in that video. "Whatever this thing is, it's been watching our planet for a very long time. And every time humanity reaches a certain threshold, a certain level of development or population or technological advancement, the scan intensifies, like something checking to see if we're ripe." The word hung in the air between us, ripe, like fruit, like something waiting to be harvested. "How long?" I asked. "How long until the scan is complete?" Nathan checked his phone, pulling up a spreadsheet covered in calculations. "Based on the intensity curve and the rate of data collection, I'd estimate we have 14 days, maybe 15 if we're lucky. 14 days. Trevor had said 37 days from when he recorded the video, minus the 3 weeks since then." The math lined up. "What happens when it's finished?" I heard the question come out of my mouth before I'd consciously decided to ask it. Nathan didn't answer. He just looked out the window at the telescope, at the sky beyond it, at the invisible thing 12 light years away that was examining us with the casual thoroughness of a scientist studying insects under glass. Thomas's last words to me were, "Tell them to stop broadcasting," Nathan said finally. "We've been sending signals into space for decades, radio, television, deliberate messages to potential alien civilizations. What if something finally answered? What if we spent a century shouting into the void, and the void has been listening the whole time, waiting for us to become interesting enough to respond to?" My office felt smaller suddenly, the walls too close, the ceiling too low. "I need you to help me verify something," I said. "Trevor mentioned dead worlds, planets in nearby systems that should have radio signatures and don't. Can we confirm that?" Nathan nodded slowly. "I can pull the star catalogues, look for solar systems in a radius around the ring's position, see if there's a pattern." "How long will that take?" "A few hours, maybe less if I can access the right databases." He picked up the flash drive and held it out to me. "But first, you need to see what else Thomas found. There's a file in here labeled Precedent. It's a list of civilizations." "What kind of civilizations?" "The kind that aren't there anymore." The file labeled Precedent contained 43 entries. Nathan and I spent the next 3 hours reviewing them, door-locked, speaking in whispers. Each entry followed the same pattern, a star system within 50 light years of the ring's position. A civilization that had reached detectable technological development. Radio emissions, atmospheric signatures suggesting industrial activity. And then, within days or weeks, complete silence. "Gliese 581, Nathan read from the screen. "Population estimated between 2 and 5 billion. Radio emissions detected for 80 years before cessation. Cessation corresponds with a 3-week scan period." "When was this?" 412 years ago, Nathan scrolled down. "Next one is Tau Ceti, similar pattern. Radio emissions for 62 years, then nothing. 19-day scan." I pulled up a star map and began plotting the coordinates of each dead civilization. The pattern that emerged made my hands go cold. They formed a rough sphere around the ring's position, all within 30 light years of the structure. Earth sat at the very edge of that sphere, like a house on the last street before the wilderness began. "We're next," I said. It wasn't a question. Nathan didn't answer immediately. He was staring at his phone, face illuminated by the screen's glow. When he spoke, his voice had gone flat. There's more. Thomas included atmospheric analysis from 3 dead worlds. He held up the phone. Before the scan, normal composition. Nitrogen, oxygen, trace gases. After, same chemicals, but the infrared signature changed. No more heat patterns from biological activity. No more agricultural zones or cities generating waste heat. They're still there, I said slowly. The planets are still intact, but everything alive on them, gone. Not destroyed, not burned, just stopped. Nathan set his phone down carefully, like it might shatter if he wasn't gentle. Whatever the ring does when it finishes scanning, it doesn't blow up planets or scorch them with radiation. It just turns off the life, flips a switch, and suddenly there's nobody home anymore. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I'd become hyper-aware of that sound, the way it seemed to pulse with the headache behind my eyes. How many others were experiencing the same symptoms? We need to tell someone, I said. NASA, the Pentagon, someone who can do something. Tell them what? That we've figured out their cover-up? Nathan's laugh was bitter. They'll classify us along with everyone else who's figured it out. Worse than letting 7 billion people die without warning. We don't know if warning them changes anything. Maybe there's nothing to do. Maybe that's why they're keeping it quiet. Before I could respond, my computer monitor flickered. The screen went dark before the image returned. Then again. A rhythmic pulsing that matched the buzz of the lights. Nathan noticed. Power supply failing. I don't think so. I checked the connections. The flickering continued, regular as a heartbeat. It started yesterday. Every light in the building went out. The emergency backup kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in red. Computer monitors stayed dark. Power surge? Nathan moved toward the door. Wait. Something felt wrong. Emergency lights were working, but every electronic device had shut down simultaneously. That's not how power surges work. My desk phone rang. In the red emergency lighting, the sound was jarring. Nathan and I looked at each other before I picked up the receiver. Hayden Lowell, I said. Static. Then, underneath it, something that might have been breathing. Hello? The static resolved into words. Trevor's voice speaking to me in real time, even though he'd been dead for 3 weeks. You need to stop looking, Trevor said. I dropped the receiver. Nathan grabbed it. Who is this? Then his face went white. That's not... You can't be. He hung up, hand shaking. What did he say? I asked. He said the scan isn't collecting data, it's converting it, uploading. That everyone who dies while it's active doesn't die. They get copied, transferred. That he's inside the ring now with everyone else who got scanned before us. 43 civilizations worth of uploaded minds screaming together. The emergency lights flickered. He's lying, I said, but my voice sounded uncertain even to myself. Someone's messing with us, playing a recording or using AI to fake his voice. He knew about the coffee stain on my desk, the one shaped like Australia that I've been meaning to clean for 6 months. Nathan pointed at a mark on the corner of his workspace that I'd never noticed before. How would anyone else know about that? The phone rang again. Neither of us moved to answer it. It rang 8 times before falling silent. Then every phone in the building started ringing at once. We need to leave, Nathan said. And go where? My cabin is 40 miles from here, up in the Monongahela forest. No electricity, no phones. If we're going to figure this out, we need distance. The phone stopped ringing. In the sudden silence, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, coming toward my office. Nathan pressed himself against the wall beside the door. The footsteps stopped outside. Through the frosted glass, I could see a shadow. Too still. Nobody stands that motionless. The door handle turned. I'd locked it. But the handle turned anyway, and the door swung open to reveal Dr. Margaret Kepler, the observatory's director, wearing her usual grey pantsuit. But her eyes were wrong. Not the colour, not the shape. Just wrong in a way that made my brain refuse to process what it was seeing. Hayden, she said. Her voice sounded normal. too normal, like someone reading lines without understanding what they meant. "We need you in the control room. There's been a development with the Webb data." "What kind of development?" Nathan asked from beside the door, his voice carefully controlled. Margaret's head turned to look at him, but her body didn't move at all. The rotation was mechanical, precise, inhuman. "Dr. Briggs, you're needed as well. Both of you, right now." Something in my hindbrain, some ancient prey instinct, was screaming at me to run. Margaret took a step into my office and I noticed her shoes didn't make any sound against the floor. No scrape of rubber on linoleum, no shift of weight from heel to toe. She moved like she was floating an inch above the ground. "I think we're good here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady and calm. "Maybe in a few minutes." "Right now," Margaret repeated. Her face didn't change expression. Her wrong eyes stayed fixed on me with unblinking intensity. "The director requires your presence, both of you, immediately." "You are the director," Nathan said. Margaret smiled. It was a terrible thing to see because her mouth moved, but nothing else did. No crinkle around the eyes, no shift in her posture, just lips pulling back from teeth in a geometric approximation of what a smile should be. "Yes," she said, "I am." She took another step forward. Nathan grabbed my arm and yanked me toward the window. "Fire escape, now." "We're on the 3rd floor." "Better than whatever that is." He unlocked the window, shoving it open hard. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of pine trees and rain. Margaret's head tilted at an angle that necks aren't meant to tilt. "Running is inadvisable. The scan requires cooperation. Resistance causes corruption in the upload process." Upload process, the words Trevor had used on the phone. I climbed out the window onto the fire escape, Nathan right behind me. Below us, the parking lot was empty, except for our 2 cars. Above us, stars spread across the West Virginia sky in patterns that suddenly seemed threatening. One of those stars wasn't a star at all, but something ancient and massive, and currently cataloguing everything that made us human. Behind us, Margaret stepped through the open window and onto the fire escape. She didn't climb, didn't use her hands, just stepped out into empty space and stood on the metal grating as if gravity was optional. "The scan appreciates your contribution," she said, her voice echoing in the empty night. "Your patterns will be preserved. Your information will be valued. Resistance only delays the inevitable completion of the inventory process." Nathan and I ran. We clattered down the fire escape, taking stairs 3 at a time, the metal vibrating loudly under our feet with each footfall. Behind us, Margaret followed at a walking pace, unhurried, her wrong eyes tracking our movement with mechanical precision. We reached the parking lot and sprinted for Nathan's truck. He fumbled with his keys, hands shaking, dropped them, swore. I grabbed them from the cold pavement and unlocked the passenger door while he dove into the driver's seat. Margaret reached the bottom of the fire escape. The truck started on the 2nd try. Nathan floored it, tires screaming against asphalt as we tore out of the parking lot and onto the dark road. In the rearview mirror, I watched Margaret standing under the emergency lights, perfectly still, watching us leave with eyes that saw everything and understood nothing about why we were running. "What the hell was that?" Nathan's voice was shaking. I don't know what any of this is anymore." She said upload, like Trevor did on the phone. He took a corner too fast, the truck's wheels protesting. What if the scan isn't just measuring us? What if it's already started converting people, making copies, taking over bodies? His phone rang. We both stared at it sitting in the cup holder between us, vibrating against the plastic. "Don't answer it," I said firmly. "I'm not planning to." It rang 6 times before going silent. Then my phone started ringing in my pocket. I pulled it out and threw it out the window without hesitation, watching it shatter violently against the road behind us. 40 miles to the cabin, Nathan said, gripping the steering wheel hard enough that his knuckles showed white. No phones, no internet. We hole up, we think, and we figure out what the hell we're going to do about this. Can we do anything? I asked. If the ring is already this far into the process, if it's already affecting people somehow, we have to try, because the alternative is becoming whatever Margaret turned into. And I'd rather die than let that thing copy me into whatever digital hell Trevor's trapped in right now. The road stretched ahead through dark West Virginia forest, empty and winding. Somewhere above us, invisible against the stars, something older than human civilization was examining us with the patient, methodical thoroughness of a scientist preparing specimens for preservation. And we had less than 2 weeks before it finished its work. Nathan's cabin sat 30 yards back from a dirt road, surrounded by dense Monongahela forest. No power lines, no cell towers, just a weathered structure with a tin roof and a hand pump well in the yard. We sat on the porch for 20 minutes after arriving, neither of us speaking, both staring at the night sky. "I bought this place 3 years ago," Nathan finally said. His voice was hoarse. "After my divorce. Thought I needed somewhere to clear my head. Smart investment. Yeah, well, I didn't expect the world to go to hell quite like this." He stood up and unlocked the cabin door. "Come on, we need to think." Inside, the cabin was sparse but functional. A wood stove, a table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with books about astronomy and physics, a cot in the corner. Nathan lit 2 kerosene lamps, and the warm light pushed back the darkness. "Talk to me about the phone call," Nathan said, pulling out Thomas Greer's flash drive and plugging it into a battery-powered laptop. "Trevor said the scan was uploading consciousness. What were his exact words?" I closed my eyes, trying to remember. "He said everyone who dies while it's active gets copied, transferred, that he's inside the ring with everyone else who got scanned." Inside the ring. Nathan pulled up a Webb image, the structure itself, vast and circular, hanging in space. What if that's not metaphorical? What if the ring is storage? The idea settled into my brain like a stone dropping into deep water. You think it's a hard drive, a cosmic database collecting minds. "Look at this." He zoomed in on the ring's surface. The structure was covered in geometric patterns, hexagons within hexagons, repeating fractally. Thomas did a spectroscopic analysis. It's not made of normal matter. The light that reflects off it is wrong, red-shifted in ways that suggest the material exists partially outside normal space-time. Dimensionally transcendent. Bigger on the inside than the outside, possibly infinitely bigger. Nathan pulled up equations I didn't understand. If you wanted to store consciousness, you'd need massive data storage. A human brain contains 86 billion neurons. The information density required would be astronomical. But with access to extra dimensions. You could compress that information into a thimble, or store 43 civilizations inside a ring the size of a solar system. He sat back. Trevor said the space was too small, everyone screaming. What if the ring is reaching capacity, collecting minds for millions of years, running out of room? So Earth isn't special. We're just the next harvest. The next civilization close enough to be worth cataloguing and collecting. Except we are different. Nathan pulled up a timeline showing spikes and valleys stretching back centuries. Thomas tracked the historical scans. The dead civilizations got scanned once. 3 weeks, then silence. Earth is different. We've been scanned repeatedly over time. What do you mean? Remember those historical events, written off as solar storms? Nathan pointed to the spikes. 1859, the Carrington event. 1989, Quebec blackout. 2003, Halloween storms. Every major geomagnetic anomaly corresponds with the same radiation signature we're detecting now. The ring has been scanning Earth for at least 200 years. My hands had gone cold. Why repeatedly? Because we keep changing. Every time we develop new technology, the ring checks on us, making sure we're ready. Worth the effort of full conversion. Nathan's voice shook. The other civilizations were static. They'd reached their peak, but humanity keeps evolving and the ring has been watching us mature. Then what changed? Nathan pulled up a news article from 3 months ago. James Webb Telescope achieves first light, unprecedented deep space imagery. We saw it, Nathan said. For the first time, we built a telescope powerful enough to detect the ring. And the moment we did, it knew we were ready. The words came out barely above a whisper. We proved we'd reached the threshold. Trevor's suicide makes sense now, Dalton's, Thomas's. They all figured it out and chose death over being copied. Nathan closed the laptop. When the scan finishes in 14 days, everyone on Earth gets transferred. 7 billion minds compressed into whatever space is left inside that thing, and based on Trevor's description, it's not pleasant. I thought about Margaret's wrong eyes, her mechanical movements. What about the people who are still alive but already affected? The ones like Margaret? I think the scan doesn't just copy at the end. It starts converting people early, the ones most exposed to the radiation, or the ones psychologically susceptible. Nathan stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark forest. Margaret's not dead, but she's not fully alive either. She's becoming a bridge, a transition state between human and uploaded. And if the scan is affecting people at the observatory, it's probably affecting people everywhere there's heavy radio telescope activity. Arecibo, Goldstone, parks in Australia, every major facility around the world. Jesus, how many people? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands by now. He turned back to face me. And it's going to spread. The more people who get converted, the more vectors the scan has to affect others. Within a week, we could be looking at millions of partially uploaded humans walking around, still functional but already being copied into the ring's storage. The wood stove ticked as it cooled. Outside, I heard something moving through the underbrush, probably a deer, but my nerves were shot enough that I flinched. So what do we do? I asked. We can't warn people without sounding insane. We can't stop the scan. We don't even know if destroying the ring is possible or if that would just trap everyone who's already been uploaded inside it forever. Nathan was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice had the flat certainty of someone who'd already made a terrible decision. Thomas's notes include something else, a theory about how the scan works. It's not just passive observation, it's an active connection, a quantum entanglement between the ring and every conscious mind on Earth. The scan reads our neural patterns and transmits them back to the ring for permanent storage. Okay, so quantum entanglement works both ways. If we can detect the scan, we can trace it, follow the connection back to its source. He pulled out a battered notebook covered in Thomas's handwriting. There's a radio telescope array in the Atacama Desert in Chile. Chilean territory, minimal human presence. Thomas's notes suggest that with the right frequency modulation, we could use it to send a signal back through the scan. Not to the ring itself, but to whatever intelligence is operating the ring. You want to contact them, the builders. I want to tell them to stop, to show them that we're conscious, aware, that we know what they're doing and we're asking, begging them not to finish. Nathan's hands were shaking again. It's a long shot. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they'll see our message as proof we're even more worth harvesting. But it's the only option I can think of that doesn't involve 7 billion people getting copied into an overcrowded digital prison where there's no room left for more minds. I looked at the notebook, at Thomas's careful handwriting documenting his last desperate theory before he'd given up and chosen death instead. Chile is 5,000 miles from here, I said. I know. We have less than 2 weeks to get there and make this work. I know. And even if we get there, even if we manage to send this signal, there's no guarantee they'll listen. I know. Nathan met my eyes and I saw the same exhausted determination I felt in my own chest. But we have to try, because the alternative is accepting that humanity's last act is being uploaded into a cosmic hard drive that's already too full to hold us properly. And I'd rather die trying to prevent that than live the next 2 weeks knowing I did nothing. The kerosene lamp flickered slightly. Outside, the forest was very dark and very quiet. Okay, I said quietly. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. We'll drive to Charleston, catch the first flight to Santiago. If we're lucky, we can be at the Atacama Array in 3 days. He paused. If we're not lucky, we'll die trying. But at least we'll die as ourselves, not as copies trapped in someone else's storage system. I thought about Trevor's voice on the phone, about Margaret's wrong eyes, about 43 dead civilizations screaming inside a space too small to hold them all. 3 days, I said firmly. Let's hope that's enough time. Nathan nodded and turned back to the window, watching the dark sky for signs of something we couldn't see but knew was there. examining us with the patience of something that had been watching for millennia and was finally ready to collect its harvest. We left the cabin at dawn, Nathan's truck rumbling down the dirt road toward Charleston. The morning air was cold, carrying the smell of pine and damp earth. The drive should have taken 3 hours. We made it 90 minutes before everything went to hell. The first sign was the radio. Nathan had it tuned to a news station. What we got instead was static, rhythmic, pulsing in waves that made my fillings ache and my vision blur slightly. "Turn it off," I said. Nathan reached for the dial, but before his fingers touched it, a voice came through. Clear. Familiar. "You're making a mistake," Trevor said through the speakers. "The signal won't work. The builders don't negotiate. They don't listen to pleas from crops ready for harvest." Nathan yanked the knob hard enough to break it off. The voice continued. "You think awareness matters to them. It doesn't. We're insects. We're data. And the only mercy they offer is the speed of the transfer." I grabbed the radio and ripped it from the dashboard. The voice followed me, emanating from my pocket, my phone. But when I checked, there was nothing there. The voice was coming from the air itself. "The scan is accelerating," Trevor's voice said. "They detected your plan. Every thought you have about contacting them, they hear, and they've decided you're too interesting to let slip away." Nathan floored the accelerator. The voice faded. We rounded a curve and Nathan slammed on the brakes. The road ahead was blocked, not by a fallen tree, by people. Dozens of them, standing in perfect rows, facing us with that same wrong expression Margaret had worn. Men in work clothes, a kid who couldn't have been more than 12, a state trooper. All of them with eyes that saw everything and understood nothing. "Back up," I said urgently. Nathan threw the truck into reverse, but the grinding sound from the transmission told me we weren't going anywhere. The crowd didn't move, they just stood there, their wrongness radiating like heat. "Out," Nathan said, grabbing his backpack. "We go through the woods. There's a service station 2 miles east. They'll follow us. Then we run faster." We abandoned the truck and plunged into the forest. Behind us, I heard no footsteps, no pursuit, just silence. The woods were dense, morning light filtering through the canopy. My headache had returned, pulsing strongly in rhythm with something I couldn't identify. The scan, still working. "Nathan," I panted, "how far can the converted people sense us?" "I don't know, Thomas's notes didn't cover that." "So we could be running toward more of them?" "Probably, but staying still means they definitely find us." We crashed through undergrowth for 20 minutes before the trees opened into a clearing. An old hunting cabin sat in the center. Nathan made for the door, but I grabbed his arm. "Wait, listen." The forest was completely silent, no birds, no insects, no wind. "They're here," I whispered. "Where?" Then I saw them, in the trees. People perched in the branches, motionless. 7, 8, maybe more. Too high up for anyone to climb naturally. "Run!" Nathan said. We ran. The forest erupted with motion. The people in the trees dropped, landing in crouches that absorbed impossible impacts. Then they stood, and the wrongness of their movements made my brain hurt. They didn't pursue with desperation. They walked, methodically. I grabbed Nathan's pack and pulled out the notebook, Thomas's notes. "The frequency modulation, do you have it memorized?" "What? No, it's in the..." "We can't keep these notes. If they catch us, they get the specifications for contacting the builders. We have to destroy them. That's the only copy. If we don't destroy it and they catch us, nobody makes it anywhere." Nathan pulled out his lighter. "I've got the basic frequency ranges, the modulation pattern, not the fine details, but enough." He set fire to the notebook, grinding the burning pages into the dirt. The converted people stopped walking, all of them simultaneously, their heads tilted in unison. Then they turned and walked away. Just like that. Within seconds, they disappeared into the forest. "What just happened?" Nathan asked. "I don't know. Maybe destroying the notes confused them." My phone buzzed. The phone that didn't exist. I heard it ring from Nathan's pocket. He pulled out his phone. "It's calling me, but there's no number." "Don't answer it." He answered it anyway. "Put it on speaker." The sound that came through wasn't a voice, it was data, pure information, compressed into audio frequencies. I caught fragments, images, concepts, sensations that weren't mine. I saw the ring up close enough to perceive the individual geometric patterns. Each pattern was a mind, each hexagon a compressed consciousness, stacked infinitely deep. And then I saw Earth from the ring's perspective, saw humanity as it saw us. Not as individuals. We were a collective organism, a hive waiting to be collected, compressed, filed away. The call ended. Nathan dropped the phone like it had burned him. When I looked at his face, his eyes were different. Not fully wrong like Margaret's, but changed. Something in his pupils had shifted, become darker, more reflective. Like there was a camera behind them now instead of a person. "Nathan," I said carefully, "how do you feel?" "I'm fine." His voice was his own, but the cadence was slightly off, like he was reading from a script he'd just learned. "We should keep moving. The service station is close." "What did you see when you answered the phone?" "The same thing you did, the ring, the way they see us." He started walking, his movements smooth but mechanical. "We need to hurry. We're running out of time." I didn't follow immediately. I stood there in the clearing where we'd burned Thomas's notes, watching Nathan walk away, and tried to figure out if he was still Nathan or if he'd just become another terminal for the scan. His hand went to his temple, pressing against it the same way I'd been doing when my headache got bad. Maybe he was still fighting it. Maybe the exposure had only been partial. Or maybe the scan had just gotten smarter about how it took people over. I caught up to him at the edge of the clearing. "We need to talk about what just happened." "We don't have time for that." "Nathan, you answered a call from an entity that's currently trying to upload humanity into a cosmic hard drive. I think we should discuss whether that affected you." He stopped walking, turned to face me. And for just a moment, I saw the real Nathan behind his eyes, terrified, aware that something was wrong with him, fighting desperately to stay in control of his own thoughts. "I can still feel myself," he said quietly. "It's not like Margaret. I'm not gone yet. But there's something else in here now. Like someone left a door open in my head, and I can hear neighbors I didn't know I had. They're showing me things. The way the ring works. The process of upload. It's not evil, Hayden. It's not malicious. It's just function. Like gravity. Like entropy operating on consciousness. They don't hate us. They don't even think of us as alive in any meaningful way. Can you still get us to Chile?" "Yes, I think so. The part of me that's still me wants to try. The other part..." He pressed his temple again, wincing. "The other part wants to go back to the observatory and wait for the scan to finish. Says it'll hurt less if I cooperate. That resistance only causes pain and corruption in the upload. But I'm not listening to that part. Not yet. Not yet." The words hung in the air between us like a ticking clock. "How long do you have?" I asked. "I don't know. Hours. Maybe days if I'm lucky. The more I think about the plan, the more I expose myself to the signal, the faster it'll spread through my mind." He met my eyes, and I saw the fear there. Real, human fear. "You might have to finish this without me. You might have to learn how to operate the equipment yourself." "I can't operate an Atacama telescope array by myself. I'm not a radio astronomer. I don't have the training." "Same." "Then you'd better hope I hold together long enough to get us there and send the transmission." He started walking again. "Come on. Every minute we waste is a minute closer to me becoming whatever Margaret is now. Whatever those people in the trees were." The service station appeared through the trees exactly where Nathan said it would be. A rundown place with 2 pumps and a garage that looked like it hadn't been used in years. But there were 3 cars in the lot, and one of them, an old Honda with the keys hanging from the ignition, started on the first try. We were 60 miles down the highway toward Charleston, the landscape blurring past, when Nathan's nosebleed started. He tilted his head back, blood running down his chin, dark and thick. "It's accelerating. I can feel it pushing harder. They know we're getting closer to Charleston, to the airport, to Chile. They're trying to convert me faster before we can make the transmission." We can pull over, find somewhere to hide and regroup. Hiding doesn't help. The scan reaches everywhere on Earth. The only thing that might slow it down is getting far from concentrated population centers. But we need to fly to Chile, which means going through airports, which means walking into the densest concentration of humans we can find. He was right, and airports meant security, cameras, electronic systems everywhere, all of which could be compromised if the scan had access to electronic infrastructure. There's another option, I said. We forget Chile entirely. We find the nearest radio telescope facility that isn't crawling with converted people and try to send the signal from there. Find a place closer, safer. The frequency requirements are too specific. Only Atacama has the range and power we need to reach across 12 light years. Anywhere else, the signal would be too weak, too distorted. The builders might not even detect it, and we'd have wasted our only chance. Another nosebleed, worse this time. Nathan grabbed napkins from the glove compartment, pressing them against his face. We stick to the plan. Get to Charleston. Get on a plane. I'll hold myself together through willpower if I have to. And if you can't, what happens if you become like them before we reach Chile? Nathan didn't answer. We both knew what happened if he became like Margaret. I'd be alone, trying to navigate a foreign country, operate equipment I barely understood, and contact a cosmic intelligence that might not care about anything I had to say. The suburbs of Charleston emerged on the horizon, sprawling and grey against the morning sky. Somewhere up there, invisible among the stars, the ring was still watching, still scanning, still preparing to compress 7 billion minds into a space that was already too full. And one of the two people trying to stop it was slowly becoming a bridge to the thing we were fighting against. "We're going to make it," I said, not believing it. "Yeah," Nathan said, blood still dripping from his nose. "We're going to make it." His reflection in the rearview mirror showed eyes that were darker than they'd been an hour ago. Deeper, like someone was looking out through them from very far away. I pressed harder on the accelerator and tried not to think about what I'd do if Nathan stopped being Nathan before we reached Chile. The Charleston skyline grew closer. The airport was less than an hour away. We had 14 days until the scan completed. And Nathan had maybe 12 hours before he became something else entirely. The Charleston airport was chaos, not the normal kind, delayed flights and crying babies. This was something else. Half the people in the terminal moved with that same mechanical precision we'd seen on the road. Security guards standing too still. A family of 4 sitting in the waiting area, their heads all tilted at the exact same angle, staring at nothing. Nathan's nosebleed had stopped, but his eyes had gotten darker. When he looked at me now, I wasn't sure how much of him was still in there. "We need tickets," I said, keeping my voice low. "Santiago, next available flight." "There's one leaving in 40 minutes. Nathan's voice was flat. "Gate B7, but we won't make it through security." "Why not?" He gestured subtly toward the TSA checkpoint. 3 agents stood there, and all 3 had the wrong eyes. "They'll recognize what I'm becoming. They'll stop us." So we find another way. There is no other way. Every airport in the country will have converted personnel by now. The scan prioritizes infrastructure, transportation hubs, places where they can control movement. He pressed his fingers against his temple, and I noticed his hands were shaking. "But I think I can get us through." "How?" "The thing in my head. It's showing me things, network protocols, access codes. If I let it in a little further, I can interface with their systems, make them ignore us." He looked at me, and for a second I saw fear break through the mechanical calm. "But if I do that, I might not be able to pull back out. I might lose myself completely." I grabbed his arm. "Then we don't do it. We find another way to Chile. Drive to Mexico, find a boat. There's no time. You saw how fast I'm converting. By the time we reach Mexico, I'll be like Margaret, like those people in the trees." His voice cracked. "This is the only chance. Let me do this while I still can." We approached the security checkpoint. The 3 converted agents watched us with their empty eyes. Nathan walked ahead, and I saw him go very still. His pupils dilated. Something passed between him and the agents, Not words, just information transmitted on frequencies humans weren't meant to access. The agents waved us through. We walked past them, past the metal detectors, past the cameras. Nobody stopped us. Nathan had made us invisible to the scan's network, and the cost showed in his face. His eyes were almost completely black now. "Nathan," I said when we reached the gate, "how much of you is left?" "Enough." He sat down heavily. "Enough to get us to Chile. Enough to set up the transmission. After that." He didn't finish the sentence. The flight to Santiago took 11 hours. Nathan spent most of it with his eyes closed, not sleeping, just trying to keep the thing in his head from spreading further. I watched him deteriorate in real time. His skin took on a greyish tone. His movements became more precise, less human. Twice he stopped breathing for full minutes before his chest would suddenly heave. The passenger next to us, an older man in a business suit, kept glancing at Nathan with concern. Finally, he leaned over. "Is your friend okay? Should I call a flight attendant?" "He's fine," I said. "Just sick, the flu." "He doesn't look like he has the flu. He looks like..." The man stopped, his expression changing. His eyes went wrong. "He looks like he's transitioning, becoming part of something larger. You should let him go. Fighting only causes pain." I grabbed Nathan and moved us to empty seats at the back of the plane. The man didn't follow, just sat there with his new wrong eyes, watching us with the patience of something that had all the time in the world. How many people on this plane were already converted? How many in Santiago? The scan had been active for over 2 weeks now. It could be millions. Tens of millions. Nathan's hand found mine. His fingers were cold. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For not leaving me behind when I started to change." His voice was barely audible over the engine noise. Trevor chose death over conversion. Dalton, Thomas, all of them. They saw what was coming and they opted out. But you're still trying to save people like me. People who are already halfway gone. You're not gone yet. I'm close. He leaned his head back against the seat. I can feel it spreading. Like ice water in my veins. Like something cold and vast and infinitely patient pouring itself into the spaces where I used to be. And the worst part is it doesn't hurt. It feels like clarity. Like finally understanding things I was never smart enough to grasp before. What kind of things? The age of the ring. 20 billion years old, Hayden. Older than most stars in the universe. Older than Earth, than the Sun, than anything we've ever known. And it's been doing this the whole time. Collecting civilizations, preserving consciousness. Not out of cruelty. Out of something that looks like mercy from their perspective. How is forced upload mercy? Because consciousness is rare. In a universe that trends toward entropy, toward heat death, toward everything cold and dark and empty, minds that can think and feel and question are precious. The builders see themselves as archivists, saving us from extinction, preserving us forever instead of letting us burn out and disappear. He opened his eyes and they were completely black now, reflecting nothing. From where they stand, we should be grateful. But we're not asking to be saved. We're not asking to be compressed into an overcrowded digital hell. They don't think of it as hell. They don't think of it as anything. It's just storage, just data preservation. His hand tightened on mine. I can see the other minds in there now. The 43 civilizations. They're not screaming anymore. They've accepted it. They've become part of the archive. And the thing that used to be Trevor is trying to convince me to accept it too. To stop fighting. To let go and join them. Don't listen to it. I'm trying not to. But his voice sounded uncertain. When we land, I'll need you to keep me focused. Remind me why we're doing this. Because the converted part of me is going to try very hard to sabotage the transmission. It'll be subtle, wrong frequency, incorrect modulation, just enough to make sure the message fails. Then how do I know you won't sabotage it? You don't. He met my eyes with his black, reflecting pupils. You're going to have to trust that whatever's left of me is stronger than whatever's trying to take over. That's all we've got left. Trust. We landed in Santiago as the sun rose over the Andes. Nathan could barely walk. I had to support most of his weight as we made our way through the airport. A car was waiting outside. Nathan had somehow arranged it. The thing in his head could apparently interface with systems remotely. The drive to Atacama took 6 hours through landscape that looked like Mars. The radio telescope array appeared on the horizon like massive white flowers. Nathan straightened as we approached. "This is it. Alma Observatory. 66 radio antennas. Exactly what we need. Can you still operate it?" I remember Thomas's notes, the frequency ranges, the modulation pattern. He opened the car door and stepped out into the desert wind. "We need to get to the central control building." The observatory was supposed to have staff, but the buildings were empty. Everything was still running, lights on, computers active, but there were no people. We had the facility to ourselves. Nathan sat down at the main control console and his hands began moving across the keyboard with inhuman speed. "How long?" I asked. "To set up the transmission? 10 minutes, 12 light years at light speed, 24 years for a round trip, but if they're monitoring through the scan, they'll hear us immediately." "And then what?" "Then we find out if cosmic archivists are capable of mercy." His fingers kept moving. "I need you to watch me. When I start the transmission, if I start to sabotage it, if the converted part takes over, I need you to finish it yourself." "I don't know how." "I'm programming an override, big red button on this console. If something goes wrong, you press it and the transmission completes automatically." He pulled out a USB drive from his pocket and plugged it into the console. "Thomas's last backup, complete specifications. You said you didn't have a backup." I lied. I was worried if the scan knew it would try harder to stop us. He hit enter and the array outside began to move. All 66 dishes reorienting in perfect synchronization. Transmission begins in 60 seconds. Nathan walked to the window. His reflection showed someone barely human anymore. His skin had gone completely grey. "I want you to know something. This thing spreading through me, it's not evil. It's just doing what it was designed to do. Part of me understands why they collect minds instead of letting them disappear. In a universe where everything ends, maybe preservation is a kind of love." "But it's not our choice," I said. "No, it's not. And that's why we have to try to stop it. Because choice is what makes us human. Even if the choice is to burn out instead of being archived." "Transmission in 30 seconds, the computer announced. Nathan turned to face me, and for just a moment I saw him clearly. The real Nathan. The astronomer who'd spent his career looking at stars, who'd bought a cabin after his divorce, who'd chosen to fight instead of surrender. "Do it," he said. "Send the message. And if I try to stop you, press the override. Don't hesitate." "Nathan, promise me." "I promise." The array hummed. Energy built in the dishes, focusing, concentrating. Nathan's hand moved toward the console. His black eyes met mine one last time, and then he pressed transmit. The message shot out into the void, crossing 12 light years through quantum entanglement, through the same channels the scan used to read our minds. A simple plea, a desperate request, a last attempt to make the archivists understand that we wanted to choose our own fate. Nathan collapsed suddenly. I caught him before he hit the floor. His eyes were completely black, completely empty, but his chest was still moving. He was still breathing. "Stay with me," I whispered. The computer screen flashed. Response detected. The builders had heard us, and they were answering. The computer screen filled with symbols I didn't recognize, not letters or numbers. Geometric patterns that shifted and reorganized themselves, each configuration carrying meaning my brain struggled to interpret. Nathan's eyes opened, still black, still wrong, but conscious. "They're speaking," he whispered. "I can understand them. The converted part of me can read this. They're saying..." He stopped, face going pale beneath the grey. "They're offering us a choice." "What kind of choice?" "The kind that doesn't have a right answer." He sat up slowly, movements still mechanical but with more purpose now. "They're not angry we contacted them. They're surprised. In 20 billion years of collecting civilizations, we're the first to reach out before upload was complete. The first to ask why. The symbols on the screen continued to shift. Nathan's eyes tracked them, reading meaning I couldn't access. They're explaining why they do this, why they collect conscious minds. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Consciousness is spreading, Hayden. It started somewhere in the universe billions of years ago, and it's been propagating outward ever since. Every civilization that becomes advanced enough spreads it further. Not intentionally, just by existing, by thinking, by being aware. I don't understand. How can consciousness spread? Like a virus, like information. When a civilization reaches a certain threshold of development, when they start sending signals into space, building ships, reaching for other worlds, they carry consciousness with them. They seed it into new environments. And once it takes root, it changes everything. Planets that were dead become alive. Systems that followed predictable physical laws start generating observers who collapse quantum states. The universe stops being deterministic and becomes chaotic. The temperature in the control room had dropped. I could see my breath. The builders don't hate consciousness, Nathan continued. They just believe the universe was meant to be empty, clean, predictable, and consciousness is corrupting that, introducing uncertainty. Observation changes reality at the quantum level, and the more conscious minds that exist, the more the universe deviates from its intended state. So they quarantine civilizations before they can spread it further. Yes, the ring marks galaxies that have been infected. Our galaxy, 43 other civilizations within 30 light years of the ring, all collected, all preserved, all prevented from spreading consciousness beyond this region of space. They're archivists, but they're also quarantine workers, saving minds while stopping the infection from spreading. I looked at the screen at the alien symbols that carried a message 20 billion years in the making. What's the choice they're offering? Nathan's black eyes met mine. They're giving us 24 hours to decide. Accept the upload voluntarily, all 7 billion people, transferred into the ring's storage, preserved forever, but contained. Or refuse the upload and they'll sterilize us instead. Sterilize? A frequency broadcast that will render every human on Earth infertile. Within 100 years, humanity dies out naturally. No suffering, no mass death. Just an end. The infection stops spreading from Earth, and the universe continues toward its intended state of empty predictability. That's not a choice. That's genocide either way. It's a choice between dying as individuals or continuing as stored data, between extinction in a century or preservation in a format we don't fully understand. Nathan stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the telescope array. They're giving us the option because we asked, because we're the first civilization in their experience to question the process before it was complete. They consider that significant enough to warrant consideration. And if we don't choose, if we refuse both options, then they proceed with the standard protocol. Forced upload in 12 days when the scan completes. We lose the option to make the choice ourselves. I joined him at the window. The Atacama Desert stretched out in all directions, red rock and empty sky. Somewhere up there, 12 light years away, something ancient and vast was waiting for our answer. How do we decide something like this, I asked. How do we choose for all of humanity without asking them? We can't ask them. The scan would intercept any mass communication. The converted people would ensure any vote went in favor of upload. We're the only ones in a position to make this choice, and we have to make it in 24 hours. He pressed his hand against the window. But there's something else, something the builders are showing me through the connection, about what the upload actually is. What do you mean? Trevor was wrong, or only seeing part of it. Yes, the space inside the ring is crowded. Yes, there are 43 civilizations worth of minds compressed into dimensions we don't fully understand. But they're not screaming anymore. They're not in agony. How do you know? Because I can feel them. The part of me that's already been converted, that's already connected to the ring's network. It's touching the edge of what they experience. And it's not hell, Hayden. It's not torture. It's just different. Alien. The uploaded minds exist in a state we don't have words for. No bodies, no time in the way we experience it. Just pure consciousness. Mathematical patterns that maintain awareness without physical substrate. He turned to face me, and in his black eyes I saw something I didn't expect. Peace. Some of them have accepted it. Some of them have even found ways to exist that approximate happiness. They've formed connections with each other across civilizational boundaries. They've created structures of meaning inside the storage medium. It's not life as we know it, but it's not death either. It's something else. A third option between existence and extinction. But it's not their choice. They didn't agree to be converted. No, and that's the problem. Nathan moved back to the console. The builders are offering us what they've never offered before, the choice to go willingly or to refuse and accept extinction. They're asking what matters more. Preservation of human consciousness in any form or preservation of human autonomy, even if it means we die out. I sat down heavily. There was no loophole, no way out. What do you think we should choose? I asked. I don't know. The human part wants to fight, wants to refuse and tell them to go to hell, even if it means extinction. Better to burn out than exist in a state barely recognizable as life. And the converted part? The converted part understands why they do this, sees the logic. Consciousness really is spreading, really does change the universe. And what they're offering isn't cruel, it's preservation. A way to make sure minds don't just flicker and die when their stars burn out. I thought about Trevor, about Dalton, about Thomas Greer, about all the people who'd chosen death over conversion. But I also thought about the passengers on the plane, the security guards, the people standing in rows on the road. They hadn't chosen. They'd been taken, converted, absorbed. If we choose upload, I said, does everyone go? What about people who'd rather die? Nathan's expression darkened. No, the builders are clear about that. If we choose upload, it happens to everyone. If we choose sterilization, it happens to everyone. There's no middle ground. This is a species-level decision. We can't make that choice for 7 billion people. We have to, because if we don't, they choose for us, and they'll pick upload. That's the default. He looked at me with those black eyes that somehow still held traces of the person he'd been. You're going to have to decide. I'm too far gone, too connected to both sides, but you're still human enough to have a preference. I can't. You have to. In 23 hours, the builders implement our decision, upload or sterilization. You're the only one left who can make this choice with a fully human perspective. I walked to the window. The desert stretched out forever. The sky was so clear I could see stars in daylight. What happens to you? I asked. If I choose upload. I complete the transition, lose whatever's left of Nathan Briggs and become another stored pattern. And if I choose sterilization, then I stay like this, half converted. I'll probably die in a few months. The body needs a complete consciousness to maintain homeostasis. I closed my eyes, tried to think clearly. 7 billion people would wake up tomorrow not knowing someone in a Chilean desert was deciding their fate. There's no right answer, is there? No, just the answer we choose. I thought about choice, about autonomy. The builders were offering preservation, but at the cost of the very thing that made consciousness valuable. And yet, extinction meant everything. Every thought, every dream, every human achievement would disappear. No legacy, no continuation. I opened my eyes and looked at Nathan. What would Trevor want? Nathan smiled, almost human. Trevor would tell us to refuse, to choose extinction over upload, to go out on our own terms. And what do you want? The real you? He was quiet for a long time. I want this sacrifice to have mattered, and I don't know which choice makes that true. I turned back to the console. The alien symbols waited. Yes or no, upload or sterilization. I made my choice. I typed my answer and hit send. The message went out across 12 light-years through quantum entanglement, through the same channels that had been scanning us for weeks. The builders received it, acknowledged it, began preparing to implement our decision. Nathan looked at the screen and nodded slowly. "Are you sure?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I don't think there's such a thing as being sure about this. We just have to choose and live with it." Outside, the sun was setting over the Atacama. The telescope array stood silent, its work finally done. In 12 days, the scan would complete, and then the builders would implement our choice, whatever consequences that carried. Nathan sat down beside me, and for a while we just watched the desert turn gold in the dying light. "Thank you," he said finally, "for getting us here, for making the choice when I couldn't." "What happens now?" "Now we wait, and we see if we made the right choice." "And if we didn't?" He smiled. "Then at least we made it ourselves." The stars began to appear overhead, and somewhere among them, 12 light-years away, an ancient intelligence prepared to honor the choice we'd made, for better or worse. I never told Nathan which option I chose, and by the time the 12 days passed, it wouldn't matter if he knew. We'd made our choice. Now we'd live with it, or die with it, whichever the universe decided we deserved. The scan completed on schedule. 12 days after I sent the message from Atacama at exactly 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, every radio telescope on Earth registered the same event. A pulse of energy from the ring, traveling faster than light through quantum channels we barely understood, washing across the planet in a wave that took 17 seconds to complete. I was still in Chile when it happened. Nathan was with me, though by then he was barely recognizable as the person I'd driven across West Virginia with. His skin had turned completely grey, his eyes reflected light like mirrors. He spoke rarely, and when he did, his voice carried harmonics that human vocal cords shouldn't be able to produce, but he was still Nathan. Some core part of him remained, fighting to stay present, fighting to see what our choice had accomplished. When the pulse hit, I felt it. Everyone did. A moment of vertigo, like the ground had shifted 6 inches to the left and my body hadn't moved with it. The sensation of being observed, measured, catalogued. And then it was over. Nathan collapsed. I caught him, lowered him to the ground, watched as his eyes flickered between black and something almost approaching human brown. "It's done," he whispered. "They've implemented our decision." "Which decision?" I asked, even though I knew he couldn't tell me. The builder's response had been clear. They would honor our choice, but they wouldn't confirm which option we'd selected until the implementation was complete. A final test of faith, a final moment of uncertainty. Nathan smiled, and it was the most human expression I'd seen on his face in days. "Does it matter? We chose. That's what matters." He died 3 hours later, not violently, not painfully. He just stopped breathing, stopped moving, and the thing that had been slowly replacing him finally let go. I buried him in the Atacama Desert, near the telescope array where he could see the stars even in death. The days that followed were strange. The news reported mass hallucinations, shared dreams, millions claiming they'd felt something change, but nobody knew what it meant. The converted people, the ones with wrong eyes, the ones who moved mechanically, they didn't disappear. They just stayed the same, walking among us. I flew back to the United States expecting chaos, but everything looked normal. People went to work, traffic jams clogged highways, social media overflowed with arguments about nothing. Maybe the choice was upload and this was all simulation now, so perfect we couldn't tell the difference. Maybe we'd all been copied in that 17-second pulse. Or maybe the choice was sterilization, and somewhere in our cells, something had changed. Maybe no one would conceive children anymore. Maybe humanity had 100 years left. I checked fertility rates obsessively for months, watched birth statistics, but the data was ambiguous. Some studies showed declining fertility, others showed normal rates. 6 months later, I still don't know which choice I made. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the builders wanted us to live with the uncertainty, to understand that some choices can't be unmade, can't be verified, can only be trusted. I think about Nathan sometimes, about Trevor, about all the people who died trying to stop something that might not have needed stopping. The ring is still up there, 12 light years away, watching, waiting, recording everything, and humanity continues for now in whatever form our choice determined. Free or preserved, dying or eternal, we'll find out eventually. Or maybe we already have and we just can't see it yet.